welcome. This is July 6, 2024. I'm with Pannobhasa, former Buddhist monk living in South Carolina. Oops. And we're going to talk about offensive speech and offensive cats. So welcome, Pannobhasa. It's always good to see you again.
Hey, O'Brien.
Offensive speech from a Buddhist point of view, I guess. Are you getting
yeah, it's like offensive speech and what to do about it, really, because it's like the new Buddhists of the left in the West, they really emphasize, you shouldn't say anything offensive. It's like I've had people back when I was a monk, with good intentions and everything, tell me you shouldn't say anything that upsets people because that's like wrong speech, and then they'll have like quotes from the Pali text saying that, you should know when to speak in a timely manner, and you should know, if it's something is going to be unpleasant or pleasant, you're probably better off not saying the unpleasant stuff, this kind of thing. And it's all entirely one way. It's this issue of, you shouldn't say anything that might offend other people. And then they completely leave out the ethics of the other people that are getting offended. What are the other people that are hearing the offensive speech? What are they supposed to do from a Buddhist point of view? It never says that, because then they just switch right over to leftism, where you get offended and you complain, and then you silence or shut down or somehow punish the person who said what offended you, which of course just sensitizes people to get them more easily offended so they can shut down whatever they don't like to hear.
Yeah, I thought one of the Buddhist rules on speech is if it's truthful and useful and hurtful, you should say it because it's necessary for you. If you have to say something to person, if it's actually useful. But if it's not useful and it's hurtful, then don't say it.
Yeah, sometimes it is pretty much necessary, or at least advisable, to say something that the person to a person is not going to like what you're saying.
Yeah, there's situations like that when Buddhists aren't doormats.
Yeah. So anyways, I mean, this was brought up by the editor from Lion's Roar, who interviewed me way back years ago when I was a monk. And then, he's trying to ask me these gotcha questions, and I successfully answered them, I guess, because the interview never got published in the magazine.
Yeah, I never published it.
Yeah. So it's like, it's a two-sided thing. Like the speaker has like duties, ethical duties from a dharmic point of view, and also the hearer or the listener has duties from a dharmic point of view, and the duties of the listener or the hearer tend to be ignored. It's just don't say anything offensive because that's harsh speech or whatever. But still, it's like the person who's speaking does have a kind of ethical duty not to deliberately say things in order to hurt people's feelings or make them feel bad or anything like that.
Not to be harsh about it, right? It should be straightforward and gentle in speech, like it says in the Metta Sutta.
Yeah. So there's like 4 kinds of wrong speech. One is just plain out lying. One is pisunavacha, which is bad mouthing someone behind their back in order to get people not to like them, which isn't just slander. Sometimes it's translated as slander, but it can even be the truth. But if you're saying it for the purpose of poisoning people's mind against this person, just out of malice or whatever, it still qualifies as wrong speech, even though it can be true. Then you got parusavacha, which is the main one we're going to be talking about, which is harsh speech. And that can be true too. It's a kind of wrong speech that can also be true. I mean, if you're telling somebody that they're stupid, it may be that they really are stupid, but if you're saying it just to shame them or make them, hurt their feelings or make them feel bad or something, it's still harsh speech. And then fourth is sampapalapa, which is just sort of like pointless chatter, like gossip, that kind of thing. So anyways, this harsh speech, the one that we were talking about, is you have the duty not to deliberately try to say things in order to hurt their feelings or, make them feel bad or whatever. But the listener also has the duty that even if the person is deliberately trying to abuse them, still the listener has the duty to forgive them and not be offended. And it's like in the West, people just assume that you don't have any choice on whether you're going to be offended or not, which just isn't true. I mean, you always have a choice whether you're going to suffer or not, even if you're just so in automatic pilot mode that you don't realize that you have a choice, but still it's always volitional. So if you're going to be offended, I mean, you have essentially chosen to be offended, even though it may be that you're so semi-conscious that you're unaware of having chosen that it's just like a knee-jerk reflex just through force of habit or whatever. But even if somebody really is trying to abuse you, it's that from the point of Dharma, it's the duty of the listener to just forgive the other person, send metta or whatever, and not be offended.
Although you can respond to them, I guess the seal aspect of it is you can sort of respond to that person, keep them under control.
Yeah, you can. I mean, that's generally the way I do. I just sort of remain calm and polite and just deal with their accusations or whatever. Point out that what they're saying is not correct or something. Just a second, I want to try and find a verse of the Dhammapada.
Okay, we're back on.
Okay, towards the beginning, right here, verse 4 of the Dhammapada. He abused me, he struck me, he overpowered me, he robbed me. Those who do not harbor such thoughts still their hatred.
Yeah, I remember that.
He abused me is something you're not supposed to be like wallowing in. You're just supposed to let it go. And then you don't have the hate and the resentment and so forth, which are unskillful mental states, but which apparently the rainbow Buddhists of the left nowadays just think that it's just the duty is completely one way. You're just not allowed to say what might offend, like, essentially non-white males. It's like people who aren't white males, you're not allowed to offend them. You can offend white males, I guess, because they're the oppressor class and all that, but
so
they just completely ignore.
Right. They have the right to be triggered and scream about
they completely ignore the duty of the listener to just turn the other cheek, using Christian terms. Just forgiving your enemies and blessing those that curse you and all that. I mean, that was fundamental to like New Testament ethics, and there's a lot of that in Buddhist ethics too, where you just forgive the person who's doing bad stuff. I mean, you can still take action to like defend yourself or defend others to some degree, that kind of thing. But still, I mean, you're not supposed to be doing it out of a motive of hatred or resentment.
or hurt or screaming.
Yeah. So that's like, we've talked about this before. I'm sure it's been brought up in our videos before. I don't remember if we've done them. I don't remember if we've done a video specifically about it, but it's such an important topic.
It is.
And it's just completely overlooked by most Western Buddhists, as far as I know. Yeah. Especially the ones that are, the complete lefties with the rainbow flags over their Dharma halls and all that.
Yeah.
So still, I mean, it's like two people are talking. The first person who's talking has, the duty not to be abusive deliberately. I mean, he might need to say stuff, like send, launch a few truth bombs or whatever, but he's not doing it for the sake of making the other person feel bad. He's doing it for the sake of getting some important truth across to the other person. The other person may or may not want to hear. But then the hearer, I mean, he's got just as important of a duty that even if the first person really is trying to offend him, he should not take offense. He shouldn't experience resentment. He should just forgive the other person and just let it go. I mean, he may politely respond and say, you're speaking a little too harshly, I think, or something like that. But still, I mean, it's not just a one-way street. I mean, it's like there's always ethical duties on both sides whenever two people are interacting. It's never 100% one person's fault, because of course karma comes into it too. It's like any sort of interaction is being co-created anyhow.
Yeah. So
it's your karma to hear it, even if you don't want to hear it.
So they have to forgive the straight white males. I know some of our Buddhist monks have said they have to be so careful about what they say not to trigger their audience. So they're kind of missing out on some Dharma teachings if they can't trigger their audience. There's so many things probably monks don't talk about then.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's kind of the way it is now. It's like a buyer's market for Dharma teachers, where, it used to be that you had to be found worthy to be a disciple. Like the first episode of Kung Fu, the pilot episode of Kung Fu when
Yeah.
he's still a kid. He's got to stand out in the sun and rain for days just to show that he really is worthy of being allowed into the monastery and given a chance at becoming a monk. Whereas now it's just the students are like examining the teachers to see if the teachers are worthy.
Yeah, like
without really considering whether they're worthy or not.
Yeah, so it's like YouTube. There's a buyer's market. Like I think Doug's Dharma has got over 100,000 hits. So sometimes even monks are talking to him. So yeah, like it's a buyer's market. So they're competing for students. So then therefore they don't want to offend people. So that's a problem from a dharmic perspective.
Yeah, well, I mean, also the people just don't get that it's their duty to, just not be offended. That being offended is immoral. That if you are offended, you are behaving immorally. You're behaving in an unethical way. You've just created bad karma for yourself through your own being offended.
Yeah.
And so a lot of Dharma teachers, I think almost all Dharma teachers in the West, they talk in the smooth voice, like kind of like they're talking to kids or something, and they try to make everything as bland. They don't want to ruffle any feathers or anything. It's just like standard for Dharma teachers nowadays, which includes a lot of monks.
I'm thinking about Western nuns as well. Like I haven't listened to a lot of their talks, but yeah, what about them and what about what they're saying? I wonder.
Well, I mean, the ethics of the situation would apply whether they're male or female or, monks or nuns or whatever, lay people.
Yeah, but I think
the basics of how ethics works just remains the same throughout the human race.
But I think the nuns are a bit more on the left than the monks.
Probably, yeah. And then the people who support them are way more on the left, I'm pretty sure, just because, it's like a monk and a nun both come to town, and more of the lefty new Buddhists will go and listen to the nun just for the sake of, gender equality or, empowerment of women or whatever it is.
Yeah, they tend to be feminists for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So I met one woman who just was under the opinion that Ajahn Brahm was an arahant, mainly just because so many feminists are declaring him an arahant because, he helped to revive the Bhikkhuni order, or at least people think that he helped to revive the Bhikkhuni order.
Yeah, that's scary, calling someone an arahant, because it's a real major offense for someone to actually claim they're an arahant when they're not. Of course, he's not saying that, but it's scary when people make claims like that. No, don't do that.
Well, I mean, especially if they're doing it for political reasons and not spiritual reasons.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that was just the main point of what I was trying to say. It's just an important thing that people should bear in mind that, I mean, even the person who's just sitting there listening to somebody talk still has moral duties from a dharmic point of view. And the main moral duty is, no hate, no anger, and if you take offense, that's your own doing. That's your action of taking offense. I mean, for them to talk is their karma. Their words are their own karma. And if they're speaking, calmly, just for the sake of getting the truth across, then, I mean, they're not doing anything wrong necessarily. But even if they are like deliberately trying to abuse somebody, still, if the person is offended by that, that is the fault of the person who is offended and not the fault of the person who's speaking.
That's right. They both have to deal with it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's like, what I do is my karma, but your reaction to what I do is your karma. And if you do something unskillful, like getting pissed off or, complaining or whatever, that's on you, not on me.
True. Good point. Well, I guess we can keep it a short video if that's it. Should we wrap up at this point? Anything else?
Yeah, I guess that's good enough.
Yeah, well, thank you kindly, pannobhasa. Good talk.